Steve, you were on the Zoom with Pete today. What do you think he learned from last year that he can help this year?
The Zoom presser, it was everything you come to expect with Pete Alonso interviews, right? He was goofy, he was affable, he was energetic. He talked, big about, you heard it, about a potential parade. He talked, of course, about what a slump feels like, saying it's like eating a poop sandwich. It was Pete Alonso to a T. But what I will say is that the biggest takeaway for me was a line about the biggest thing he learned this offseason, which was to allow himself more grace when it comes to how critical he is and how much pressure he puts on himself. And I know, Luis Rojas talked about it being something that motivates Pete to put a lot of pressure on himself and to, hear people say he can't be a defensive first baseman and going out there and proving them wrong. But I did feel like last year, the expectation and the desire to really carry this team the way he did in 2019, that got to him when it wasn't happening. And I do think that you saw a different Pete Alonso in post-game interviews, someone who was clearly distressed and upset and pressing. And so if that is the big takeaway for Pete Alonso this offseason, that he does need to give himself more of a break, I think that's going to serve him well going into this season, because certainly we saw what he can do over the course of 162, and I have no doubt he can get back to that. Last year was such a weird season for so many players, for so many reasons. But if it doesn't start off the way that he wants it to, he's got to be able to relax a little bit and give himself a break.
Wondering how many people in our audience are watching with the closed captioning on and just had to rewind to make sure that poop sandwich was actually a phrase that was mentioned on the show. Rec, Alonso mentioned he has learned to give himself a little bit more grace. And I'm wondering, as a professional athlete with high expectations, how hard is it to learn how to deal with failure, especially for someone like Pete, who started with so much success?
It's incredibly hard. It's something I battled my entire career, and I never had the kind of success at any level that Pete did in the big leagues in 2019. So I can only imagine how those expectations weighed on him. But for me, when I played, I had expectations of myself. I had expectations of the way that I should go out there and play, how I should be for my teammates, everything. And at times when you go through baseball, you're going to fail, first of all. And when that happens, you have to learn how to accept that. And if you want to use it as motivation and kind of let that help you kind of push through some of the hard times, that's great. But at times it can just really add up and it can weigh you down. And yeah, it looked like for Pete that happened to him a few times last season. And it's so difficult. You can't express how hard it is. At times you almost have to trick yourself into not caring.